The alien ships came on a Tuesday morning. They appeared in the sky above every major city on Earth, massive and silent. The Empire had arrived, and they did not come to talk as equals. They came as masters. Captain stood on the deck of his cargo ship, the Morning Star, and watched the vessels hover over Seoul. He had been a commercial pilot for 8 years, moving supplies between Earth and the small human colonies on Mars and the Moon. Now, everything had changed. They had made their announcement clear. Earth belonged to them. Humans were now subjects of the Empire. There were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They looked at humans the way humans might look at dogs or cattle. Their technology was centuries ahead. Their weapons could turn cities to ash in seconds. Resistance seemed impossible, so most governments surrendered within days. Hated it. He hated the way soldiers walked through human streets like they owned everything. He hated the new laws that said humans could not look in the eye. He hated that his ship could only fly where they allowed. But most of all, he hated feeling powerless. His crew felt the same way. There was his engineer who had worked with for 5 years. There was young Minyu, barely 20, who handled communications. They were good people trying to survive in a world that had suddenly become a prison. One morning was loading cargo at the Mars colony station when he saw something that changed everything. An enforcer, one of their military police, was inspecting the docking area, was checking the ship's external panels when the enforcer walked by, looked up, and for just a second his eyes met this face. The enforcer stopped. "You looked at me, slave." His face went pale. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." The law is clear. They pulled out a weapon, a sleek device that hummed with energy. Ran toward them. "Wait, he didn't know, please." The enforcer didn't even glance at. He fired. The beam hit in the chest, and his friend fell to the ground, dead before he hit the metal floor. Other humans nearby looked down quickly, terrified to make the same mistake. The enforcer walked away as if nothing had happened. To him, killing a human was like swatting a fly, meaningless. Knelt beside his body, his hands shaking. Around him, other humans whispered nervously, but no one dared to protest. They had made examples like this before. Anyone who complained simply disappeared. That night couldn't sleep. He kept seeing his face, kept hearing the hum of that weapon. He thought about his friend's family back on Earth, how he would have to tell them what happened. He thought about how they had taken everything from humanity in just 6 months. Meanwhile, in Seoul, a woman named worked in an underground laboratory. Before the invasion, she had been an engineer at a tech company. Now, she worked in secret with a group of scientists who were doing something dangerous, studying technology. They had managed to recover pieces of equipment from crash sites and abandoned checkpoints. Spent her nights taking apart alien devices, trying to understand how they worked. It was illegal, of course. If they found out, they would kill everyone involved. But had discovered something incredible. The computers were powerful, but they worked in predictable patterns. They used quantum processing that followed strict mathematical rules. Human brains, though, worked differently. Humans could make intuitive leaps, could see patterns that weren't purely logical. What took a computer 3 hours to calculate could figure out in 20 minutes just by looking at the data and feeling what seemed right. She didn't understand why yet, but she knew this difference was important. Shared her findings with her team. There was an older physicist who had taught at university before the invasion. There was a young programmer who had a gift for seeing connections others missed. They all agreed. This could be a weakness in the systems. Maybe, just maybe, it could be exploited. In a small town outside of, a young woman named said goodbye to her brother. Labor collectors had come to their neighborhood, selecting people for forced work in the mining colonies. His name was on the list. Held his sister's hand. "I'll find a way to get you back, I promise." Tried to smile. "Don't do anything stupid, just stay alive." But had no intention of staying quiet. He had friends, other young people who were angry about what they had done. They met in secret, planning small acts of resistance, graffiti on buildings, sabotaging alien equipment, nothing that would really hurt the Empire but enough to feel like they were fighting back. 3 weeks after was taken, learned where she was being held, a mining facility on one of Jupiter's moons. He and his friends stole a small transport ship and went after her. They managed to break into the facility and free a dozen human prisoners, including. But they were caught on the way back. Patrol ships surrounded them, and his friends were arrested and brought to Earth for a public trial. The sentence was death, and the execution would be broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system as a warning. The night before his execution, sat in his cell and thought about his sister. At least she was free. At least he had tried. The broadcast reached every corner of human civilization. Billions watched as, and 5 other young rebels were brought before a judge. The aliens didn't even pretend it was a fair trial. The verdict had been decided before it started. Watch from the morning star, his fists clenched. Watch from her laboratory, her mind racing. Across Earth and every human colony, people watched as 6 young people were executed for the crime of wanting freedom. Something broke in humanity that day. The fear that had kept people quiet began to transform into anger. In hidden rooms and quiet conversations, humans began to talk about fighting back. Not just small acts of defiance, but real resistance. Made his decision that night. He sent coded messages to people he trusted, people who felt the same rage he did. Received one of those messages. So did a former school teacher who had been organizing underground networks. So did hundreds of others across the solar system. They had made a mistake. They thought fear would keep humans obedient. They didn't understand that sometimes fear turns into fury. They didn't believe humans had the strength to fight an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 months after the executions, the Morning Star was no longer just a cargo ship. Had spent every credit he had saved over the years to transform her. In hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, away from eyes, human engineers had installed weapons taken from abandoned alien outposts. Had come aboard 2 months ago. She brought her equipment and her knowledge, and she brought something more valuable, a way to hide from sensors. She called it a ghost drive. It bent light and energy in ways that made the ship invisible to alien detection systems, but only for short periods, maybe 10 minutes at a time before it needed to cool down. The crew had grown too. There was Wu, a former soldier who had trained with the Korean military before the invasion. He was in his 40s now, his hair starting to gray, but he could still move faster than men half his age. He taught the others how to fight, how to think like warriors instead of victims. Sora joined them next. She had been a navigation specialist on luxury cruise ships that traveled between Earth and Mars. Those ships didn't exist anymore. They had seized them all. Sora knew every route, every asteroid, every hidden spot in the solar system where a small ship could hide. Then he was 23 and angry at everything. His parents had died in a labor camp on Europa. His sister had disappeared, probably taken to some alien world as a slave. Was the best pilot had ever seen, but he took too many risks. He wanted revenge more than he wanted to live. Together, they planned their first real strike against the Empire. The target was simple, a supply depot orbiting the moon. It wasn't heavily guarded because they didn't think humans were capable of attacking it. That arrogance would be their mistake. Called the crew together in the Morning Star's small common room. He laid out the plan on a flickering hologram display. The depot has 2 patrol ships and maybe 50 soldiers inside. They rotate supplies every week. Food, weapons, equipment for the occupation forces on Earth. Wu studied the layout. If we destroy it, the in our solar system will feel it. They'll have to wait weeks for new supplies. More than that, added. She pulled up another image. I've been monitoring their communications. The depot also holds the quantum processors they use to coordinate fleet movements. Take those out, and their ships in this system won't be able to talk to each other properly for days. Sora traced a route with her finger. We can approach from behind this asteroid cluster. The ghost drive gets us past their sensors. We hit fast and leave before they know what happened. Leaned forward, his eyes bright. When do we go? Looked at each of them. These were good people, brave people, and he was asking them to risk their lives. Tomorrow, but I need you all to understand something. If we do this, we can't go back. The will hunt us. Our families might be in danger. This is the point where we stop being regular people and become criminals in the Empire's eyes. We're already criminals, Wu said quietly. They've made criminals of every human just for existing. The others nodded. There were no more questions. They launched the next morning. Sora guided them through the asteroid belt with perfect precision, dodging rocks that would have torn apart a less skillful pilot. As they approached the moon, activated the ghost drive. The ship seemed to shimmer and fade. We're invisible, she confirmed, but we only have 9 minutes. Push the engines hard. The morning star shot toward the depot like a missile. They could see the massive station hanging in space, its lights bright against the dark. 2 patrol ships drifted nearby, their crews probably bored and unprepared. At 500 meters gave the order, fire. The weapons had installed roared to life. Missiles streaked from the morning star and slammed into the depot's main storage section. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, a flower of fire blooming in the vacuum of space. The patrol ships reacted immediately, but they were confused. Their sensors showed nothing. No attacking ship, no enemy, just an explosion that seemed to come from nowhere. They fired blindly in all directions. Ghost drive failing, warned. 4 minutes left. We need one of those patrol ships, said. Wu, get ready for boarding. Brought them alongside the nearest vessel. It was 3 times the size of the Morning Star, but it was designed for patrol work, not heavy combat. Wu and 4 other crew members suited up and launched themselves across the gap in magnetic boots. Inside the patrol ship were still trying to figure out what had attacked them when Wu and his team cut through the airlock. The fight inside was brief and brutal. They were strong, each one easily twice as powerful as a human. But humans were faster, and they fought with a desperation the aliens had never encountered. Wu shot the first he saw, then ducked under the swing of another's arm. His team spread out, using the ship's corridors against their larger enemies. In close quarters, the strength didn't matter as much. A bullet killed just as well regardless of who fired it. 15 minutes later, Wu's voice crackled over the radio. Ship is ours, 12 dead, we lost Minyu. Closed his eyes. Minyu, the young communications officer who had smiled too much. Gone. Get that ship moving. We need to leave before reinforcements arrive. They captured 2 more patrol ships the same way over the next hour. The second vessel they took intact. The third they had to fight harder for, and they lost 2 more crew members. But when it was done, they had 3 alien warships under human control. The surviving from the depot, those who had escaped in emergency pods, sent out distress signals. Those signals reached the Fleet Command within minutes. Fleet Commander received the report in his office on Mars. He was a career military officer, born into a family that had served the Empire for generations. He read the message twice, certain there must be an error. Humans attacked the lunar depot. His aide, a younger, nodded nervously. Yes, Commander. They destroyed the facility and captured 3 patrol ships. Laughed. It was absurd. Humans were barely capable of maintaining the simple ships the Empire allowed them to operate. The idea that they could coordinate a military strike was ridiculous. How many ships did they use? Our survivors reported only 1, sir, but it seemed to appear and disappear. They think it had some kind of cloaking technology. That made Stop laughing. Cloaking technology was advanced, even by standards. How had humans developed such a thing? He pulled up the reports from the past months. There had been small incidents, equipment sabotage, missing weapons. He had dismissed it all as random criminal activity. Maybe he had been wrong. Contacted the Overlord Council on the Empire's capital world. He explained the situation and requested permission to deal with the human problem more seriously. The Council's response came back within a day. Do what is necessary. Pacify the system. The Council gave him 50 warships. It seemed excessive for dealing with humans but was a careful commander. He would take no chances. Meanwhile, and his crew had become heroes to the human resistance. News of their victory spread through secret channels. In hidden bases across the solar system, other groups began planning their own attacks, shared her ghost drive technology. Wu trained new fighters. The teacher who had been organizing networks helped coordinate strikes across multiple locations. And in a secret facility on Earth made another discovery. She had been studying the captured ship's computers, and she found something interesting. The aliens used a network that connected all their military systems. Ships talked to bases, bases talked to weapons platforms, everything linked together through quantum communication. But the network had a weakness. It assumed only would use it. It had no real security against someone who thought differently, who approached problems from an angle the aliens had never considered. Smiled as she worked through the code. Humans were good at thinking differently. It was time to show the Empire just how different humanity could be. Fleet Commander arrived in the solar system with 50 warships and absolute confidence. He had fought in 3 campaigns across the Empire's territory, putting down rebellions on worlds far more advanced than Earth. Humans would be easy. He positioned his fleet near the asteroid belt, the perfect location to control movement between the inner and outer planets. His sensors detected unusual activity among the asteroids, but he assumed it was just human miners trying to hide. He sent scouts to investigate. None of them came back. That should have been his first warning, but was too experienced to panic. He sent a full squadron of 10 ships this time, armed and ready for combat. They entered the asteroid belt carefully, scanning every rock. Watched them come. The Morning Star was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, its ghost drive keeping it invisible. Around him, scattered through thousands of kilometers of space, were 30 other human ships. Most were converted cargo vessels like his. A few were the captured patrol ships, now painted black and fitted with human pilots who had learned to fly them. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it would have to be enough. They're splitting up, Sara reported from her navigation station. 5 ships going north, 5 going south. Keyed his radio to the shared frequency. All ships, remember the plan. We don't fight like they expect. We fight like humans. The squadron moved deeper into the asteroid field. Their sensors swept back and forth, searching for the enemy. They maintained perfect formation, exactly as their training taught them. Each ship was positioned to support the others, overlapping fields of fire creating a defensive barrier nothing should penetrate. The first asteroid exploded without warning. It had been mined with human explosives and remotely detonated. Chunks of rock tore through space, slamming into 2 ships. Their shields held, but the formation broke as pilots swerved to avoid the debris. The second explosion came 3 seconds later. Then the third. The asteroids themselves had become weapons, and they were flying into a minefield they couldn't detect. Now commanded. The human ships appeared from everywhere at once. They had been hiding in asteroid shadows, behind rocks, inside carved-out spaces. The ghost drives flickered off simultaneously, and suddenly they faced enemies on all sides. Flew his fighter like it was part of his body, weaving between asteroids at speeds that made the others nervous just watching. He got behind a ship and poured fire into its engines. The alien vessel tried to turn, but was already gone, dancing away to line up another shot. Wu commanded one of the captured ships. He knew the weaknesses of these vessels now, knew exactly where to hit them. His crew was mostly former soldiers like himself, people who understood that war wasn't about honor. It was about winning. The squadron tried to regroup, but every time they formed up, another asteroid exploded or another human ship appeared from an impossible angle. They were used to fighting in open space, where their superior weapons and shields gave them the advantage. Here, among the rocks and debris, with enemies that appeared and vanished like ghosts, they were lost. 3 ships were destroyed in the first 5 minutes. 2 more were badly damaged. The remaining 5 tried to retreat but had planned for that too. More human ships blocked their escape route, firing from concealed positions. Watched the battle from his flagship's command center. His face remained calm, but inside he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: uncertainty. The reports from the squadron made no sense. Humans appearing from nowhere, using tactics no database had ever recorded, fighting with a ferocity that seemed almost insane. "Send reinforcements," he ordered. 20 ships. I want those asteroids cleared. But his second officer hesitated. "Commander, if we commit too many ships to the asteroid belt, our flanks will be exposed." "Exposed to what? There are only a few human vessels. They can't threaten a fleet this size." The officer didn't argue further, but noticed the doubt in his eyes. He ignored it and sent the reinforcements. Saw the new ships approaching on sensors. 20 warships, more than his entire fleet combined. This was the moment. Either his plan worked or they all died. "Phase 2, he said calmly. "Everyone fall back to the rally point." The human ships disengaged and ran. They scattered in different directions, each one heading deeper into the asteroid field. The reinforcements pursued, splitting up to chase their targets. Exactly what wanted. In war, humans had learned something thousands of years ago: never fight an enemy on their terms. Change the battlefield. Make them fight your way. They had superior technology and training, but they fought by rules. Humans didn't. The chase went on for an hour. Ships pursuing human vessels through increasingly dangerous asteroid clusters. Several times, the aliens almost caught their prey, but the humans always slipped away at the last second, knowing paths through the rocks that shouldn't exist. What they didn't realize was that humans had been mapping this asteroid belt for months. Every rock, every trajectory, every safe route was memorized. Sora had trained pilots on every shortcut and hazard. The humans weren't running blindly. They were leading the chase. 20 reinforcement ships spread out across hundreds of thousands of kilometers. They lost formation. They lost communication with each other as the asteroids interfered with their signals. Each ship was alone, hunting what it thought was easy prey. That's when the trap closed. The human ships that had been running suddenly stopped running. They turned and fought, but they weren't alone anymore. For every ship, there were suddenly 3 or 4 human vessels, appearing from hiding spots, firing from multiple angles. In the chaos, brought the Morning Star alongside its flagship. It was insane. The flagship was massive, bristling with weapons, but had found a weakness. Every ship had docking ports for supply transfers. Those ports had minimal shielding because the Empire never imagined anyone would be crazy enough to board a flagship during battle. "Wu, you're up," said. Wu and his boarding team launched. They crossed the gap in seconds, magnetic clamps grabbing onto the flagship's hull. Cutting torches burned through the outer airlock. Alarms shrieked inside the ship, but by the time security teams responded, humans were already inside. The fighting in the corridors was vicious. Wu moved through the ship like he had been born for this. Every corner was an opportunity. Every doorway was cover. His team killed with precise, brutal efficiency. They fought their way to the bridge. Himself stood there, giving orders to his scattered fleet. He turned when the doors exploded inward, reaching for his sidearm. Wu shot him in the shoulder before he could draw it. "Surrender," Wu said in badly accented language, "or die." Looked at the humans, their weapons trained on him and his crew. He had commanded fleets across the galaxy. He had conquered worlds, and now he was beaten by primitives who shouldn't even understand space warfare. He dropped his weapon. Within minutes, the word spread across the fleet. Their commander had been captured. Their flagship was in human hands. The remaining ships, already battered and scattered, lost their will to fight. Some tried to flee. Others surrendered. A few fought to the last, but they were destroyed by human crews who had learned to fight like demons. When the battle ended, counted the cost. 16 human ships destroyed, 200 crew members dead, but they had won. They had defeated a fleet that outnumbered them 2-1. News of the victory reached Earth within hours. In Seoul's underground laboratory celebrated. On Mars' colony, human workers whispered in amazement. Across every human settlement, people heard the impossible story. Humanity had won a real battle against the Empire. But far away, on the home world of Prime, the Overlord Council received the reports in silence. One of them, the Supreme Military Overlord, finally spoke. They defeated SciFi's fleet. Another council member shifted uncomfortably. Was overconfident. He underestimated them. 50 ships, the Supreme Military Overlord said quietly. He had 50 ships. These humans destroyed half of them and captured their commander. This is not overconfidence. This is a threat. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to negotiate to offer humans better terms. Others wanted immediate retaliation. In the end, they chose overwhelming force. They assembled the Grand Armada, 500 warships, the largest fleet mobilized in a century. They would send it to Earth with one order: complete extermination. No survivors. Burn the planet until nothing remained but ash. Stood on the bridge of the captured flagship, looking at in his cell. The commander stared back at him with something like respect. "You won this battle," said, "but the Empire will not let this stand. They will send everything they have to destroy you." Nodded. "I know, let them come, we'll be ready." But inside, he wasn't sure they could survive what was coming. The battle in the asteroid belt had shown that humans could fight. But could they stand against 500 warships? Could they protect Earth itself from an empire that wanted them dead? He looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity's victory would be their last. The Grand Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system like a storm of metal and fire. 500 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humans had built. They came with one purpose: to end humanity forever. Supreme Commander led the Armada from his massive dreadnought. He was old with scars from a dozen campaigns across the galaxy. He had seen rebellions before, had crushed them without mercy. But this time felt different. The Overlord Council had given him absolute authority. No negotiations, no mercy, just destruction. On Earth, every human with access to a radio or screen watched the Armada approach. There were 500 points of light in the sky, growing brighter each day. Everyone knew what they meant. The end was coming. Coordinated the defense from a bunker beneath Seoul. She had spent months organizing resistance cells, but nothing could prepare humanity for this. Earth's defenses consisted of 200 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels. Weapons platforms orbited the Moon and Mars, but they were makeshift, built from scraps and desperation. "We can't win this," one of her officers said quietly. 500 ships against 200, it's suicide. Looked at the tactical display. The man was right. Every calculation, every simulation showed the same result. Earth would fall within days, maybe hours. But she had learned something from victory in the asteroid belt. Sometimes numbers didn't matter as much as will. "We don't need to win," she said. "We just need to buy time." Time for what, she didn't say. Because there was a second plan, a desperate gamble that might save humanity or might doom them even faster. had proposed it 2 weeks ago and had agreed even though the odds were terrible. While the Armada approached Earth, was halfway across the solar system in the opposite direction. With him were and Sora. They traveled in a captured ship, painted with the Empire's markings, broadcasting the Empire's identification codes. Their destination was Prime, the home world, the heart of the Empire itself. "This is insane," muttered as he piloted the ship. "Even if we get there, even if we somehow make it past their security, what are we supposed to do? 4 people against an entire planet." Was working at her station, fingers flying over alien controls. "We don't need to fight the planet. We just need to reach the central nexus." The nexus was the quantum computer network that controlled every military operation across their empire. From the nexus, commands went to 847 conquered worlds. Fleet movements, supply chains, occupation forces, everything ran through it. Had studied the system for months, learning its patterns from the ships they had captured. "If I can access the nexus directly," explained, "I can upload a virus. Something that won't destroy the system but will corrupt it, make it give wrong orders, wrong coordinates, wrong everything." Listened from the captain's chair, "And if you can't access it?" "Then we die, the people on Earth die and the win," shrugged, "but at least we tried." Sora plotted their course through space. They had access codes, taken from the captured flagship. Those codes would get them through most checkpoints, but one wrong question from a suspicious guard could end everything. They traveled for 3 weeks, jumping through the Empire's network of gates that connected distant stars. Each jump was a risk, each checkpoint a potential death trap, but the codes held and the disguise worked. To any who looked, they were just another military transport on routine business. When they finally reached Prime, felt his breath catch. The planet was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, cities of gleaming towers. Hundreds of ships orbited it, the bulk of the Empire's home fleet. Getting past them seemed impossible. "Transmitting clearance codes now," Sora said, her voice steady despite the sweat on her forehead. Minutes passed. His hand rested on the weapon's controls, ready to fight even though fighting would be pointless. Then the response came back, "Clearance granted. Proceed to Docking Station 7. They landed on a massive orbital platform without incident. Had created false orders that said they were delivering sensitive equipment to the Central Nexus facility. The guards barely glanced at them as they unloaded cargo containers that supposedly held quantum processors. Inside those containers were weapons and the tools needed to access the Nexus. The facility was underground beneath the planet's main military command center. Security was tight but predictable. Thought in patterns, followed procedures. Had memorized those procedures from captured data. She knew which doors would be guarded, which corridors had cameras, which security checks they would face. They made it to the outer level of the Nexus chamber before anyone got suspicious. An officer stopped them, looking at their credentials with narrowed eyes. "These orders seem irregular," he said. "Why would the Nexus need new processors delivered by a transport from the frontier sectors?" Sora stepped forward smoothly. She had learned language and customs better than any of them. "The frontier sectors have been experiencing quantum fluctuations. The Overlord Council wanted the processors analyzed here before installation. It's in the technical briefing." She handed him a data pad. Had created the false briefing, filled with enough technical jargon to confuse anyone who wasn't an expert. The officer scanned it, frowned, but eventually nodded. "Very well. You have 20 minutes in the outer chamber. No access to the core systems without level 9 clearance." They had 15 minutes, not 20. 15 minutes before the officer would check the authenticity of their orders with his superiors. 15 minutes before the whole planet knew humans had infiltrated their most secure facility. Worked faster than she had ever worked before. The Nexus core rose before her, a massive structure of pulsing light and quantum processors, beautiful and terrible. This single machine controlled the fate of billions across the galaxy. She plugged in her equipment and began uploading the virus. It was elegant in its simplicity. The virus wouldn't destroy files or crash systems. Instead, it would introduce small errors into every calculation. A ship ordered to jump to coordinates A would instead jump to coordinates B. Supply shipments would be sent to the wrong planets. Orders would be scrambled. The Empire's perfect machine would become unreliable. 2 minutes, warned. He and stood guard at the door, weapons ready. Almost done, said. Her fingers flew across the controls. The virus was 70% uploaded, 80%. Alarms started blaring. They know, Sora said. Security is responding. 90%, 95%. Opened fire as the first guards rounded the corner. We need to leave, now. 10 more seconds, shouted over the noise. Joined at the door, shooting at the advancing. There were too many. They wouldn't make it out. He had known this was likely, had accepted it when he agreed to the mission. But it still hurt, knowing he would never see Earth again. Done, yanked her equipment free. The virus is in. They ran, through corridors filled with guards, past security checkpoints that were sealing shut. Sora led them through maintenance passages she had memorized from stolen blueprints. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. They burst onto a landing platform where their ship waited. But between them and the ship stood a dozen soldiers, weapons raised. Sora didn't hesitate. She ran straight at them, firing her weapon. Go, get to the ship. Sora, no, reached for her, but she was already past him, buying them seconds with her life. They concentrated their fire on her. She fell, and in that moment of distraction, the others made it to the ship, threw himself into the pilot's seat and launched without waiting for clearance. Weapons fire chased them as they climbed toward orbit. More alarms, more ships moving to intercept. The entire planet's defense network was waking up. The virus is activating, said, watching her displays. Look. The ships trying to intercept them suddenly broke formation. Some changed course randomly. Others stopped entirely. Communication channels filled with confusion as orders contradicted each other. They escaped into the jump gate network before they could coordinate a proper response. Behind them, chaos spread through every system connected to the Nexus. Back on Earth, the Grand Armada had reached attack range, gave the order to begin bombardment. 500 ships prepared to turn Earth's surface to glass. Then their orders changed. Targeting systems malfunctioned. Ships received commands to fire on each other. The fleet's perfect coordination shattered into confusion. Flying a fighter in Earth's defense fleet, watched in amazement as the Armada tore itself apart. Ships fired on their own vessels, unable to distinguish friend from enemy. Others tried to retreat but jumped to wrong coordinates, appearing in the middle of asteroid fields or too close to the sun. Commanding a defense platform near the moon seized the opportunity. All ships attack now, while they're confused. The human fleet, outnumbered and suddenly had a chance. They hit the disorganized with everything they had, tried to restore order, but his own flagship systems betrayed him. His weapons wouldn't fire. His shields flickered on and off randomly. He watched his perfect armada, 500 ships of the Empire's finest, break apart under assault from primitive humans who shouldn't have survived the first minute of combat. For the first time in his long military career, felt fear. The Battle of Earth lasted 3 days, but the outcome was decided in the first hour. This virus spread through the military network like a disease, corrupting every system it touched. Ships that should have worked together fired on each other. Supply chains collapsed. Orders from commanders never reached their intended targets or arrived scrambled into nonsense. This Grand Armada, the pride of the Empire, was destroyed not by superior human weapons but by its own confusion. Of the 500 ships that had come to exterminate humanity, fewer than 50 escaped. The rest were either destroyed by human forces or crippled by their own malfunctioning systems. Brought his ship back to Earth to find the solar system transformed. Debris from vessels orbited the planet like a new ring. Human ships moved freely for the first time in years, and on every screen, on every radio channel, people were celebrating. But couldn't celebrate. He kept thinking about Sora, who had died so they could escape Prime. Another friend lost. Another life spent to buy humanity's freedom. Found him in the Morning Star's observation deck, staring at Earth's blue surface. "The virus is still spreading," she said quietly. "Reports are coming in from across the Empire. Every world connected to the Nexus is affected. They can't coordinate their occupation forces anymore." "How long will it last?" "Weeks, maybe months before they can purge the system and rebuild. By then," she trailed off, but understood. By then, the damage would be irreversible. An empire held together by perfect communication and control couldn't survive when that control shattered. On 847 conquered worlds, slaves looked up and saw their masters in chaos. On a mining world in the Andromeda sector, workers realized the guards' weapons weren't working properly. On a factory planet near the galactic core, the overseers found their security systems offline. Rebellion started small, just a few brave individuals refusing orders. Then dozens. Then thousands. The empire that had ruled for 3,000 years began to crack. Organized the aftermath from Earth. Thousands had died in the battle, and entire cities had been damaged by stray weapons fire. But they had survived. Now came the harder question: what next? "We need to reach out to the other races," she argued in the council meetings that followed. "The Empire conquered hundreds of species. If they all rise up together, they can't stop them." Disagreed. "Why should we help aliens? Let them fight their own battles. We need to secure our own solar system first. Maybe expand to nearby stars. Build our own empire." "No more empires," Wu said firmly. "We didn't fight to become what we hated." The debates went on for weeks. Meanwhile, worked with scientists from around Earth to decode more technology. The ghost drives, the weapons systems, the jump gates that connected distant stars. Humanity was learning fast, reverse engineering centuries of alien advancement in months. Volunteered to lead the first contact mission to other conquered species. She took the Morning Star, now fully repaired and upgraded, and visited a dozen worlds. What she found amazed her. Everywhere, species that had been enslaved for generations were fighting back. They couldn't coordinate responses. Their perfect military machine had become thousands of isolated outposts, each one vulnerable. On a world called, she met representatives of the people, insect-like creatures who had been conquered 200 years ago. They had heard about Earth, about humans who had defeated the Grand Armada. "We want to join you," their leader said through a translation device. "Together, we can end the Empire." Made the same offer she had made on every world. "We're not building an empire, we're building something different, a coalition of free worlds, everyone equal, no masters, no slaves." They agreed. So did the Kelvin, reptilian people from a desert world, and the aquatic beings who had maintained secret resistance cells for a century, and dozens of other species, all of them seeing in humanity's victory a chance for their own freedom. Back on Prime, the Overlord Council met in emergency session. The central nexus had been taken offline and was being rebuilt from scratch, but it would take months. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Rebellions everywhere. Entire sectors going dark. Occupation forces trapped on hostile worlds without support. "We must negotiate," one overlord said. "Offer the humans concessions, pull back from some territories, show we can coexist." "Never," another replied. "If we show weakness now, the Empire is finished. We must rebuild our strength and crush them." The debate went nowhere. The Council, which had ruled with absolute authority discovered they couldn't agree on anything. The Empire was paralyzed not just by the virus in their systems, but by their own inability to adapt to a galaxy that no longer feared them. Still imprisoned on Earth, watched the news broadcasts from his cell. He saw the Empire crumbling, saw the chaos spreading. When visited him, the commander seemed older, defeated in a way that went beyond physical capture. "You asked me once what we would build," said, "after we killed the Empire. Looked up, have you decided? We call it the Free Worlds Coalition. No central authority, no emperor or overlord. Each world governs itself, but we all agree to defend each other, to share technology and resources, to never enslave another species." "It won't work," said. "Different species, different cultures, all trying to cooperate. It will collapse into war within years." "Maybe," admitted, "but we have to try, because the alternative is becoming what you were." 3 months after the Battle of Earth, representatives from 200 worlds met on a neutral planet to sign the Coalition Charter. Humans stood alongside in Kelvin, and in species whose names couldn't pronounce, gave the opening speech, talking about freedom and cooperation and building something better than empire. Not every species joined. Some wanted revenge on the, others sought to build their own power bases. The galaxy was still chaotic, still dangerous, but for the first time in 3,000 years, there was hope. Retired from active service, he had fought enough battles, lost enough friends. He returned to civilian life, helping rebuild Earth cities and teaching new pilots. Sometimes he visited family or Sora's or the families of all the others who had died. He told them their sacrifices had mattered, that humanity was free because of what they had given. Became the Coalition's chief scientific advisor, working to ensure that advanced technology was shared freely among all member worlds. She never forgot that human creativity, human ability to think differently, had been the key to victory. She made sure that innovation was valued above rigid tradition. And Wu led the Coalition Defense Force, training soldiers from dozens of species to work together. They built a military that existed to protect, not to conquer. It wasn't perfect, and there were tensions between different species, but it was better than the Empire had been. Captain the Morning Star II, exploring regions of space the Empire had never mapped. She found new worlds, new civilizations, and brought them news of the Coalition. Some joined. Some preferred isolation. She respected their choices and moved on. Took the longest to find peace. He had wanted revenge so badly that when the war ended, he felt empty. But eventually, he found purpose in helping other young people who had lost everything. He taught them to fight, but also taught them that fighting wasn't the only answer. The Empire formally surrendered 18 months after Earth's victory. The Overlord Council, reduced to powerless figureheads, signed documents transferring control of their remaining territories to local governments. Prime itself joined the coalition as an equal member, not as a ruler. Some adapted to the new galaxy. Others retreated to isolated worlds, bitter and broken. Was eventually released and chose to stay on Earth. He wrote a book about the war, trying to explain how an empire that had seemed invincible had fallen to a species they had dismissed as primitive. The answer, he concluded, was simple. The empire had believed its own strength was absolute. They had stopped questioning, stopped adapting, stopped respecting their enemies. Humanity won because they never stopped trying to survive, never stopped finding new ways to fight, never stopped believing they could win even when victory seemed impossible. 10 years after the invasion, a memorial was built in Seoul where they had first landed. It listed the names of every human who had died fighting for freedom. Thousands of names carved into black stone. His name was there. Sora's, all the others. Visited on the anniversary of the Battle of Earth. He stood before the memorial as snow fell gently around him. A child approached, maybe 8 years old, wearing a Coalition Defense Force jacket that was too big for her. "Are you captain?" she asked. "I used to be." My teacher says you saved Earth, that you beat the whole empire. Smiled sadly. I didn't do it alone, all these people helped. He gestured to the memorial. They're the real heroes. The child studied the names. Why did they think humans were weak? Because we were smaller, we had less technology, we seemed easy to control. But we weren't. No, said, we weren't, because being strong isn't about size or technology, it's about never giving up. It's about fighting for what matters even when you're afraid. They forgot that. We never did. The child nodded seriously, then ran off to join her parents. Watched her go, this child who had been born after the war, who would grow up in a free galaxy. That was what they had fought for. Not glory or revenge, but the simple right to live without fear. He touched name on the memorial, then Sara's. We did it, he whispered. The galaxy is free. Above him, ships from a dozen different species crossed Earth's sky, heading to their own worlds. The Free Worlds Coalition was imperfect and struggling and messy, but it was theirs, built not on conquest but on cooperation, not on fear but on hope. No one had believed in the strength of humans, but they had been wrong. Humanity's strength wasn't in their bodies or their weapons. It was in their refusal to surrender, their ability to adapt, their determination to protect what they loved. The empire was gone. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy belonged to everyone. And that was worth everything they had sacrificed.